Hi, today I'd like to show you a paint treatment that will take ordinary cardboard and turn it into a prop that looks like old weathered wood. You can use this as a Halloween decoration or whatever kind of creative decoration for a themed party or however you'd like to use it. It's really simple, it's really cheap. So the first things that we're going to cover is what you will need. We will cover your preparation steps and the actual process to finish the product. So like I said, this is made out of cardboard. So the first thing that you're going to need is cardboard of any size. I do recommend larger pieces of cardboard because it does look nicer and you get a better real wood look. The next thing you'll want to do is pick up some spray paint or use some that you have laying around. In all the paints, we want to use a matte paint. You don't want anything glossy. And then we'll also want some craft paints. If you'd prefer to use black craft paint instead of spray paint, that's perfectly fine. Spray paint's just faster. So black paint, white paint. You'll want a couple of containers to put the paint in. And you'll want some containers for water. You'll need some brushes. I prefer the stiff bristle brushes. You can tear them up if you want to make a really weathered look. I found that these work just fine. And then a couple of detail brushes that you will use to put the outlines on here. And then you will want your covering to cover all your surfaces to make sure that the paint doesn't stain anything. Same with your clothes. You want to make sure that no paint will get on them and stain them. So wear old clothes, I should say. Then you have paper towel for blotting as well as for cleanup. So now that we have everything together, let's do the preparation. The first step of preparation is always to cover your surfaces. And then if you're using the spray paint or the black acrylic paint, you want to put a coat onto the cardboard. You can do a flat coat, an even coat, or you can leave it a little bit mottled. Both look just as good. And again, that's where the spray paint wins out over the acrylic in time saving. Then the next step that we're going to do is we're going to do a wash. It's not a traditional wash where you mix it up and just thin out the paint. We're going to make it as we go. So we'll take our white paint and we're going to dab just a tiny bit on the bristles, just on the very, very end. And then we're going to take the water, and again, we're just going to dip the bristles tiny bit into the water, so the very, very tips are the only thing that's wet. Blot it a little bit, and then we're just going to do a line right down the front, and you can make it as jaggedy as you want. If you want it to look all old and warped. And you can go back over it. If you think the lines are too white, you can add a little bit of water, or you can do the same technique with a black paint over it to create a darker effect. So that's the main step. That's the basis of what we're doing. If you did want to do a black wash, I have one that came out a little bit too light. So again, we're going to do the same step with just the very, very tips in the black paint and a little bit of water on the ends. I'm going to blot it a little bit, and then we're just going to lightly, with a dry brushing type technique, we're going to go over the paint just like that. And you can see how it kind of dulled down the whiteness that I thought was too bright. And you can do this as many times as you want until you get the desired effect. Just each time you have to wait until it dries. So then the next step, once you have your wood in this stage, there's one option that you can do, and that's to add knots. And to do that, we're just going to do a tiny little bit on the ends on one half of the brush. I've only dipped about that much of the brush in paint. And then we're going to find a place that looks like it'd be good for a knot, and we're going to touch down the painted edge of the brush and just do kind of a twirl. And this is one that I found looks a lot nicer. If you go over it with black, it kind of blends it a little bit. And then from here, we'll take our next step, and that's to add the outline. What we're doing here is we're going to outline the separate planks of wood. On the smaller pieces, it's harder to see, but on the bigger ones, you can see how that really makes it look like it's a piece of wood or a side of a building or side of a crate. So we're going to take a little bit of black paint, and we're just going to draw our line. And it doesn't have to be straight. Again, we're going for a warped wood look. So we're just going to put a dark black line. And then once we have our lines that are dried, we're going to go over it with white, and that's really going to make it come through. I hate to use the word pop, but essentially that's what we're doing. So you'll want to just do a tiny little bit of a line on the outside in white. And I do employ kind of a dry brushing technique because it doesn't have to be a solid line. Just a little bit to give it some dimension. And with any of these steps, you can always go back and add a little bit of water. You can always blot it or just add a little bit of black. I mean, and since you start with a black base, you can always just spray paint over it and start over if it gets too bad. But what we have right here is a couple little pieces of cardboard that look like wood. So to recap, we got together all of the things that we need, our paints, our cardboard, our protective covering. We got all of our steps ready before we started painting. And then we went through and applied the different layers, and what you have in the end are these great pieces of cardboard that look like big old wood. If you have any questions, please feel free to message me or hit me up on the discussion boards, and I hope you enjoyed the presentation. Thank you for your time.